So, good afternoon and welcome to this year's first live for the Wildlife Ambassador Program and Belize Wildlife and Referral Clinic. As you know, my name is Calvin, and unfortunately, today I'm on my own since Giann is out sick. Not with COVID, just so you know. And Dr. Isabel is here beside me also, just off screen. So, um, to get things started, just to go over what we will be, well, what I will be talking about today. Um, we'll have the talk about zoonosis and how it relates to us and animals, and then a short quiz question, and then we will move into bats as conflict species and what you can do when your house, home, anywhere that you go, maybe not out in the environment, right? But so that you know what you can do to maybe not have much conflict with bats. Followed by another question, which is related to that talk about bats. And then we will move into completing the illegal wildlife trade and traffic examples we have seen here at BWRC that we had started last in our last session last year, right? So while we're getting into this, I invite you to share, like, invite your friends. You know, this is a live session that will hopefully increase your knowledge, and hopefully you are interested in wildlife conservation. And if you are, then this live will be um, beneficial to you, right? So um, before we get into that, I would like to invite you all to join us on the Wildlife Ambassador Program. And this program is for law enforcement personnel, conservation partners, and anyone in general who is interested in wildlife conservation, right? You can send us an email to bzwildlifeambassador@gmail.com if you are interested, and we will um, send out information as to when these workshops will begin, hopefully by February. And also, materials such as towels, sheets, pillowcases, we're always in need of these kinds of materials. Um, Paper, brown papers, syringes, needles, gloves, and maybe even masks now, right? Okay, so without spending more time, we will move into the zoonosis talk. And this zoonosis talk is based on the toxocariasis, and Dr. Isabel will be doing the presentation on that. So here goes.
Hello and welcome to another talk in our One Health series on important zoonosis. My name is Dr. Isabelle Paquiduron, and today I will be talking to you about toxocariasis as a zoonosis. And as always, we will be talking about why protecting animals and the environment ultimately protects us. So the parasites we will be talking about today are also commonly called roundworms at times. So to the contents that we will go over, first of all, I will talk to you about what is this infectious agent or disease agent, how common is it in animals, humans, and the environment, what does it look like, the disease in animals as well as the disease in humans, how do we actually become infected with it, how can we diagnose and know we have it, and ultimately, of course, how can we avoid getting this disease. So some general remarks to begin with that are about intestinal worms in general and their overall connection to this whole One Health concept. To remind you, the One Health concept connects health of animals to the health of humans as well as the environment. So first of all, it is very common for dogs and cats and other animals to have some intestinal parasites. The effects of these parasites can be very minimal, from a small bit of irritation all the way to life-threatening conditions. And the really important point while we're talking to you today is that some of those parasites can transmit to humans and cause the so-called zoonosis. What makes it problematic that it is very hard to observe the worms, because most of their lives, they will actually be inside the host, so you will not see them. Sometimes you can see worms in feces as well, but mostly it is the eggs of these worms that pass, and they are microscopic, so you cannot see them with the bare eye, which makes that many pet owners tend to believe that their animals would never have worms, but in fact, most of them actually do. And the role of the environment is very important for roundworms and intestinal worms in general, because many of these can accumulate in the environment, which is then where we humans may acquire them. So first of all, what are we talking about today? The causing agent of Toxocariasis, or sometimes also called Toxocariosis, and a few other names like larval granulomatosis or visceral or just larva migrans. This is a roundworm in the class of nematoda, which is the word for roundworm. We also sometimes refer to them as spaghetti worms because that's what they look like. They're white worms that are somewhere between 10 and 18 centimeters, depending on species. There are many different species of these Ascaridae in different host animals. How common is this parasite? It is very common. If we're talking about how common it is in animals, so starting with dogs and cats, but in our wildlife species, common contact species with humans to be mentioned would also be raccoons and coatis here. There are estimates that for the dog population, almost 100% globally is affected by this parasite throughout their lives. In public parks, so in the environment where we may contract it, the prevalence is also extremely common and worldwide. In humans, however, the disease is very rarely diagnosed, it is very rarely suspected, and it is not as common as one would think from hearing that it is present very much in the animal population and also in the environment. This disease, however, is more common in hot, humid regions like here in Belize, because the eggs are able to survive in the environment much longer in our nice tropical climate. So what does it look like in animals? It can show no signs at all, yet they have worms. And one can see digestive troubles, vomiting and diarrhea, abdominal discomfort, and it can lead all the way to sudden death, for example, when an obstruction occurs with a very heavy load of worms. In general, this disease in animals affects young animals more than adults, but adults are not immune either. This here is just an example for this parasite group in general. They do what is called a body migration in their definite host. This example here is taken from the human ascarid species that does this migration actually in humans, just as Toxocariasis does it in animals. The migration starts with the eggs that are usually ingested, that have infected larvae that will then hatch in the small intestine of the definite host. They will enter the bloodstream and migrate via the bloodstream and go through circulatory system. So starting with the liver, then it will go through the heart and ultimately into the lungs. In the lungs, these larvae will leave the bloodstream again, migrate up the respiratory ways and back down into the intestines, where then they develop into adult worms, which will then in turn produce eggs again that are shed into the environment to be ingested by a next host. So this is their normal body migration that they will do in their definite host. And again, I have to emphasize this is just an example taken for the human ascarid species. Here is from the CDC a life cycle image, which again, we can start here with the egg that is shed into the environment with feces. It starts as a so-called unembryonated egg, and within about 15 days to, in really warm climate, 7 days, this not yet infectious egg that is shed at first then turns into the embryonated egg with a larva in it that can then infect the next host. Here you see the definite hosts, but here you can already see a sideline here going to what is called the accidental host of Toxocariasis, which includes humans. The transmission of this parasite can happen many different ways. So it can happen via the oral route through the mouth. They can also transmit even before birth from the mother to the next generation via the mammary glands, again, to the offspring, and then via the environment where these eggs will accumulate. And a note on the resistance in the environment. These eggs are very hardy. They have a thick shell around them, which makes it they can survive infectious for a very long time in the environment. This again brings in the role of the environment in this One Health zoonosis. So a disease of animals that accumulates in the environment and then ultimately can get us humans sick. So how do we get it? Through these eggs. This is what these eggs look like when the larva, this is a larva, the little snake-looking thing, hatches. You have to know that the concentration of eggs is very high. An adult can shed up to over 200,000 eggs per day and contaminate the soil. Of particular interest are public parks, beaches, and sandboxes, where then humans get contact with it. And most exposed, unfortunately, are children, also because at times children will stick things into their mouths. And the contamination is microscopic, so it is not visible. The main cause of infection for us humans is dirty hands. What does it look like in humans? So I mentioned to you what the body migration looks like in the definite host. In humans as a so-called erroneous host, so we are not the correct host for this parasite, that means the parasite cannot develop in us, but it tries. It starts with this larva that hatches and starts to migrate and follow our bloodstream, but then our immune system detects it and arrests the development. Depending on where that happens, there are several forms that can be caused and several ways that this may be noted. So we have a common location for these migrating larvae where they can get stuck, which is one in the viscera and another one of particular concern in the eye, so the ocular larva migrants. And the problem in diagnosing this disease and even recognizing that a human has it is that the signs of the disease are very, very diverse and depend very much on where this larva may be located, which via the bloodstream can be in a lot of different locations. At first, liver and lungs may get affected by some migration, but in humans, this parasite does not develop into an adult worm that can actually produce eggs itself. There is also another location for these migrating larvae that is in the central nervous system. There, this disease can cause seizures. In the eyes, it can cause blindness as a long-term consequence. And as so often, the effects can be more severe in younger children. These images here, this is an image of the back of the eye with damage to the retina, same here. And this is an ultrasound image showing some tracts of migration of larvae in the liver that will then eventually scar. How do we know we have it? In animals, for us veterinarians, it is very easy because they shed large numbers of eggs in the feces. There are typical clinical symptoms of big bellies, digestive troubles, and if we see an animal and it has not been dewormed, we know it is guaranteed to have these worms. But if we don't know for sure, we do a fecal analysis and then we find these very typical looking eggs. To find the contamination in the environment is possible, but it is pricey and complicated. And then to find this in humans is rather difficult because humans do not shed eggs, but it requires a serologic test, a blood test for antibodies. In some locations like the eye, it can actually be detected with a physical exam, an eye exam. But the first challenge is that it has to be suspected to be attempted to diagnose. So if the antibody test is not run, then it will not be detected. So to the most important point, how do we prevent this? How do we not get it? Number one thing to do is deworming the definite hosts. So deworming of our companion animals that live with us. And the recommendation is to do so once a month. And every veterinarian can give you the recommendations. We do also have a little list on our website for your information and can provide it to you as well upon request. It is especially important to treat pregnant females and young animals because they have a much higher prevalence of this parasite. Roaming dogs should be avoided and also treated for parasites. It is possible to eliminate the access to public parks and sandboxes and children's playgrounds, for example, to not let dogs in there. And then for us humans, it is crucially important to wash our hands before we eat and to try to not let dogs and animals poop in our recreation areas. So that was the end of this presentation. I thank you very much for your attention. And please do contact us with any questions or comments. Do check out our website. And as always, feel free to suggest some future zoonosis talks. And we are here to answer your questions.
All right, so that was the presentation on toxocariasis, which was done by Dr. Isabel. And since we're back on this again, then I would take this time again to invite anyone really interested in wildlife conservation. This includes community members, um, individuals from our conservation partners across the country and law enforcement. If you are interested in joining us for our workshops on wildlife, um, the Belize Wildlife Ambassador Program, um, send us an email to bzwildlifeambassador@gmail.com, and we will forward you some more information on when we will be starting the workshops. Um, so since we have been through the first presentation, we can now move into the first question of these lives quiz section. Shortly. And again, prefer to donate materials to the clinic. Again, towels, um, pillowcases, sheets, old clothes, even um, socks. We can use all that for all the animals that we get in and for well, cleaning. So moving on into the next section of this live, I will be talking about bats as a conflict species and what you can do to minimize the conflicts that we have with bats. All right, so give me a second here. I'll start over, fix some things, and then get back into that. Mm, all right, so starting over. A minute. Okay, so again, this sorry about that. We had some, well, I had some technical difficulties. Um, yes. Now, the conflict species of the month, again, bats, all species of bats, not one particular species. So again, out of 81 bat species identified here in Belize, there are only two vampire bats, which is the common vampire bat and the hairy-legged vampire bat. Worldwide, so far there have been over 1,400 bat species identified, and again of those bat species, 81 have been found here in Belize so far, which makes up about 85% of the mammals here in Belize. Right, so that's a lot. And bats are the only mammals that can fly, which make them very unique, right? And they are very social animals, and this allows for more than one species, for multiple species to sometimes occupy the same roost, right? So it's probably never just one species of bat that is around roosting in one area. And generally, bats have at least one offspring per year. And on a on average, the lifespan of bats is anywhere between 15 to 25 years out in the wild. And feeding methods varies from species to species. There are bats that eat only fruits, bats that eat nectar, bats that eat only insects, and bats that eat blood, which are the vampire bats, right? And those we have two of them here in Belize. Ecologically, bats are important for population control of insects. Um, they are important pollinators and seed dispersers for the bats that eat fruits, right? Public health concerns that bats pose is the rabies. They can give humans or other animals rabies, salmonellosis, external parasites like fleas and ticks, and histoplasmosis, which is um, a disease that is caused by a fungus from the droppings of bats, especially in densely populated areas with bats. And conservation status for bat species is, for some of them, they are threatened with extinction. They are near threatened with extinction, and for some, the data is not enough to determine their status. Now, humans and bat conflict. What conflicts can we have with bat? Well, like like I have mentioned before, they can roost in our attics, and they can also transmit rabies to our livestock, which would be from the vampire bats. Now, solutions to um, mitigate roosting bats roosting in attics, we can calmly or deliberately encourage bats to move out using lights and constant noise around their area that they roost in, right? And then this will cause them to not want to stick around anymore, and then hopefully eventually move out. And we could also, for the transmission of rabies, vaccinate all livestock that you have, livestock, maybe even your pets, although they would need rabies vaccine anyways, right? And then we could also use exclusion, which is the use of a one-way door, um, which can be bought or even homemade, which would be more efficient, I guess. But we must be certain that all other accesses into roofs or walls um, are closed off, sealed, right? And then the one-way door will allow the bats to move out from that area, and then they will not be able to get back into um, their roost. And we can also use tolerance as a tactic. Believe it or not, there are people that do find bats very interesting, and they are um, very into bat conservation. So they make houses like how we make houses for birds. There are bat houses that we can make, and then instead of the bats roosting in our attics and walls, they can use these bat houses instead to roost in, a safe, warm place for them to spend the day and raise their young. Now, in case before you get into that, here is an image of the one-way door that can be used to um, allow bats to get out of their old roost and not be able to get back in. This is you can use a PVC pipe and put a net around the one mouth or a sock, and then the bat will fly out and not be able to get back in, right? So now, in case of bat gets into your home or into a room that you are in, these are things that you can do to avoid getting in contact with the bats. First of all, is stay clear from the bats. If you go low, then the bats will want to get out instead of going down towards you. They will avoid you too, right? And next, you should secure your children and your pets from them maybe wanting to trying to catch the bat that's flying around the room, right? And then you would want to close all other doors that lead to other rooms and open all doors and windows that can open that lead to the outside so that the bat can fly out on its own without you interfering and maybe getting injured or injuring the bat, right? And to prevent all this from happening, again, um, seal all holes in your roofs, attics, in the walls, with at least a 16 gauge wire mesh or a mesh that is hard enough for them to not be able to push through, right? Now, do bats really want to attack us when they fly towards us? The answer is no, because why would they want to? So mainly they would be hunting for insects, and insects fly around us everywhere, right? And in cases that they are indoors with us, they are looking for a way out. They just want to get away from us. And also, if they come at us, then they can also get injured as well, right? So they would want to avoid us. And that is the end of that bat presentation. So now we can look at if we have any answers to the first question that we had, which is all right. So I realized that I just put up the question and you can't hear me, so I'll just repeat the question again. All right, so the first question again, toxocariasis is a disease that is referred to as roundworms, is referred to as ringworms. It can lead to visceral and ocular larva migrants. It can be transmitted by just touching an infected person. Um, an infected adult can shed up to 200,000 eggs per day, and the eggs can only last for 2 days in the environment. So remember to comment your answers in the comment section, and in order for you to win a prize for this question. And we have a answer here from Lewin Sib again. Hello, Lewin. I see you always watch our lives. So since we're on that and he has answered, then we can see that his answers are correct. And his answer is A, C, and E. And A, it is commonly referred to as roundworms. C, it can lead to visceral and ocular larva migrans, which Dr. Isabel went through on the presentation. And E, an infected adult can shed up to 200,000 eggs per day, right? So thank you, Lewin, for answering that first question. And since we're on that, then we can move on to the second question, which is based on the presentation that I just went over. And the second question is what to do when a bat gets trapped inside your house? A. Open all doors and windows leading outside. B. Kill the bat. C. Get as low to the ground as possible. D. Secure your pets and children. E. Open the doors to other rooms. F. Try to trap the bat with a towel or a net. G. Get onto a higher surface. Again, this question has multiple answers, and comment your answers in the comment section for you to win a prize. And now, since we've done that question, we can move on to the illegal wildlife trade and trafficking cases that we have seen here in at Belize Wildlife and Referral Clinic. And this presentation was done by Giann. So even though he's not here, he's still a part of the live session, right?
So, like we said, 30% of intakes are wildlife traffic, and some of the more common ones is the Amazon parrots. We have the monkeys who are usually orphaned. You have a lot of coatis that is taken as pets. Um, Kinkajous, crocs, scarlet macaw, like I said in that international trade, ducks, and many other species of animals that come into the clinic. And with greater risk, and being such a beautiful and charismatic animal, the scarlet macaws face up to 89% poaching rates of their nests. 89%. So, they're barely struggling to survive, and the populations are decreasing here in Belize as we speak. And, if we do nothing for it, then, um, their numbers will eventually reach zero. So these animals and birds in general are very stress prone, and during capture or transport, they will um, have high levels of stress or even die. Right. So the number one case is injury due to capture or transport. For example, these chicks in the chickable were, it's a rare happy ending, like it says in the slide. But this is an example of how collaboration and cooperation could work, right? These were caught right before they, crossed the Guatemalan border, and a cooperation between FCD, the forestry department, the police, and the clinic were able to rear these um, back into the wild. And um, thankfully, since there is a ongoing program where the nests are monitored, they knew that these can be inserted into a foster nest with a wild foster parent. And that was done, and thankfully everything went well, and um, these parrots were released back into the wild. Right, so thanks to FCD for that corporation and monitoring that they do in the chickable, and it's something important for these animals, that for these birds that are very targeted due to their you know very beautiful look. Right, another story in 2020, which is much more recent, whereby 7 birds were apprehended. Two did not make it. However, 5 were, received into the program. They were stabilized and introduced into the in situ program, whereby they are um, kept for a while, and they're monitored and see their health is checked every so often, and um, we get to ensure they are all right before they are released back into the wild. However, reports came from that very same case that, okay, we were happy that we got 5 birds back into the chickable. However, reports reached that 25 birds reached to the Guatemalan border in 2020, right? And this is information we received due to the work that we do, right? So 25 birds were lost due to the illegal pet trade there. When it comes to monkeys now, these monkeys are unfortunately, like I mentioned before, shut off their parents, meaning that their parents would be killed due to the fact that these parents would be protective towards their young, and these babies now would stay without their parent. They would be orphaned, and then people actually go door to door and sell these little guys. And if you feel sorry for your little baby monkey, and then you buy it and you try to help it. And however, the best thing to do in that case is to report or relinquish. Relinquish meaning giving it up um, on your own in order for it to stand a chance. Right? We see a case of Izzy that was received back in 2011 on the very day of the inauguration of the clinic. Right? So Izzy was one of these orphans that were shut off their moms, and as you can see, it has, if you look closely, it has some little pellets there shown on the X-ray. Fortunately, Izzy was reared and assessed, and everything went well, and she was transferred to Wild Trucks, where they have the ongoing program that they deal with primates in order for them to rehabilitate and eventually go back into the wild. Right, so that was good. Puck as well, one of the early patients whereby you see a big bullet um, stuck right in the very, very edge of its skull, um, a centimeter more, and he would receive a fracture in its skull. So this one, thankfully, the bullet could have been removed and again reared and assessed in order for transfer and further recuperation. Um, this little guy, they said that the story says that they followed the illegal owners back home, and this is how they had it. That is actually a 5 pound chain, and it's really not possible for this little cat um, to drag that chain and to actually be able to move himself with that weight, right? So this tells us that it definitely was a case of illegal ownership. And as strange as it might sound, some of these animals enter the pet trade. They are hooked into the pet trade, right? We have different crocodiles and different, yeah, mostly crocodiles that are fished and they're hooked in order for them to be sold, or in order for them to be used in the tourism market for people to take pictures with them, and things like that. However, it's really bad for them because then crocs could be a problematic species and could cause trouble around different neighborhoods where they have that water. This here also is scarlet macaw, um, and if you would notice, this wing is complete, and knowing that this animal has a bilateral symmetry, you definitely know that there is something wrong, right? This entire piece of its wing, its right wing, is missing, and more than likely they chopped it off. And Dr. I was seeing here that also not only did they chop it off, that there was a previous fracture here to this bone, kind of telling us that even before that, this bird was already either kept or injured due to capture or transport or one of these things, right? So this macaw obviously cannot make it in the wild. So in these cases, it's either keeping them in captivity, or depending on the case, that will be decided, right? But that's a sad case for that macaw there. And like I said, if they do make it past the capture stage and then past the transport stage, because some people do not know how these animals react and the amount of stress, right? And if you would try to transport them in a noisy vehicle with a lot of music and a lot of movement, then these birds will become very, very stressed, and they will actually die due to the stress. And if they make it and survive it, and they get an illegal pet owner, eventually what will happen is they would die due to malnutrition. The diet that these animals need is very delicate, right? It's very, very specific, and if that diet is not met, they will become malnutritious. This is a Amazon parrot, and its feathers, it's supposed to be green, green, green. However, if you notice, all these feathers here are very yellowed, and that is an immediate sign of malnutrition. This does not happen in the wild. So even though the owner might say, "Oh, I just found it," that would more than likely not be so, due to the fact that this does not happen in the wild. This happens over time in captivity, right? Another really, really sad case of animal neglect. This was a pet, and if you see, um, this monkey could not even stand or walk or eat by itself, and it has joint deformities and different things that tells that that was a serious case of neglect and malnutrition. We probably didn't get his diet, or probably didn't get feed at all, right? So this animal was unfortunately put down due to the fact that you know the more he was like that, he was just suffering. And looking a bit into forensics when it comes to wildlife, you see that this bird here, Hisha says that, or whatever report says that the bird was found on the roadside and hit by a car, right? However, looking at the bird closely, if you notice to the bottom here, um, maybe before hitting that car, someone flew some scissors here and cut the wings. They usually do that um, to parrot pets in order for them not to fly away. So definitely this was a pet right before the um, the incident or whatever report that we have. Um, this great curassow it's actually a game species, and um, like we've mentioned before, for game species there is open and closed season. But even though you have that open and closed season and you're hunting in that open season, you cannot hunt these in a protected area. So this is illegal, and in this case it would be um, you know confiscated from you, since it is hunted in a protected area, right? And this was, like it says, about to be dinner. This is eaten um, by many, and that is the intention of these birds, right? However, thankfully they were caught, and that was the pellet here was removed from the chest and returned back into the wild. And another one that is common when it comes to um, eating these animals, game species, um, this is a baby rodent, right? This one is a very small, and more than likely they ate his mom, right? And they caught him in order to be raised and eventually to be eaten as well, right? So they eat these animals, and well, in this case this one was caught, it was reared and released back into the wild instead of being released in the pot, right? So this one was rescued because these people did not have a permit to hunt, right? So there's a lot of considerations that you need to have before going out and hunting animals, right? Yeah, it can't be in a protected area. You have to have a hunting permit, right? It can't be in its closed season, and in this case also you cannot hunt a mother and its child, right? So that is not permitted. And then in this case, this little guy was more than likely with his mom, and it lost his mom, and they were about to eat him, grow him to be eaten as well. Um, this Hecate, critically endangered, um, was relinquished. Thankfully, instead of being eaten, these are also a game species, and they are very delicate when it comes to the surface that they're on, right? This turtle here was kept on cement and totally damaged his undershell. However, this was, the injuries were taken care of and eventually transferred to Be Free down in Toledo district, where they have a ongoing program for these animals. Another case of investigation here is this boa. They said then that it was found in the forest like this, and they kept him to cure him and take care of him. But knowing a little bit about this history, it was identified that it has mouth rot, right? Mouth rot, or infectious stomatitis is what it is. And this again does not happen in the wild. And it was easy to see that, well, this was a pet, and this occurred, in a domestic residence. Another interesting case of a 8-foot croc, which was missing 2 limbs, and it's probably might be hard to see, but there are lead traces over here, very condensed. This specific one was a case whereby, well, it was found dead. However, it was brought in for necropsy, and after further investigations, if you see in its chest, it does have a hook as well, right? And that hook must have constricted his esophagus or his breathing areas, and this animal could not eat by itself, and eventually it was weak. And due to the fact that it also had two missing limbs, then it can't defend itself, it can't move properly, it can't hunt for itself. So in the case of this, it is believed that someone found this animal suffering like that, and they gave him a mercy shot, right? Because this is very close to the head, and well, a croc wouldn't let you, a healthy, normal croc wouldn't let you go even minutely close to it, right? So that gunshot was super close, and in order for that to happen, you had to get real close and personal and aim right at the animal in this case, right? So this we know that, due to necropsy, we found out several important things about this animal, right? So again, due to these x-rays, we can see this cut here. It has so many different pellets, and like I said, you would be able to differentiate between a close shot due to the density of the pellets, and a far shot due to how far these ones are, right? So this would indicate that it is a far shot, right? It says while few cases go to court, knowing about this is, super essential in order for, this type of crime to be fighted, right? Necropsies are important, as we saw already, since you might not know the stories, and it's always important to, note whatever is reported, whatever they tell you. However, you don't necessarily have to believe everything. You go and find out the information for yourself. Necropsies are an amazing opportunity to find this information that is otherwise hidden and not told in communication, right? And it's important to document as much as possible. And the more you learn about these illegal practices, the better you can recognize, prevent, and also help us report these cases, right? So the more you know, the better. Right, so any confiscated or injured wildlife should receive a health check, and this is something that a lot of people tend to ignore or not take into consideration. These animals are very delicate, and when they have went through a bunch of stress, they need to be checked by a wildlife vet. Orphans, for example, they need to be moved immediately, and they need to start rehydration and these things, because they will succumb to stress very easily and dehydration, right? So the BWRC is readily available for these type of advice and health checks when it comes to any confiscated or injured wildlife, right? It's not just to confiscate them and take them into rehab or take them wherever they will go, but these need to be checked and revised before anything, right? And it's always important to know that dealing with animals is risky, and all the animals would sometimes need quarantine, and more importantly, due to zoonotic diseases, they will, you run a lot of risk due to the fact that we don't know what these animals can have when it comes to diseases and can give you as well. Some different services that the BWRC does in order to combat traffic is wildlife advice available to you 24/7. right? Education and outreach is something that we do as well, and we're doing now um, to inform you and let you know about these different things, right? We do wildlife healthcare. We, more importantly, received injured, orphan, and confiscated animals on behalf of the forest department, and we are able to then contact the forest department, work closely, and see how we can work, right? Again, necropsy is something important because you might find a dead animal and say, okay, well, whatever, throw it away. But there is something important, and it can lead us to crucial information um, to solve crime and these type of things. Relocation and capture in the worst case scenario, but that is usually the last call. We do trainings as well in animal ID and basic health assessment and training in animal handling. Right? We also have as a part of the um, educational outreach program, the wildlife ambassador program, which is what we're doing now, and then we invite everyone to be a part of this and learn more when it comes to wildlife uh, education and protection in Belize, right? So knowing these things is important, and again, it falls into the One Health approach where um, we're not just taking care of the animal's health and safety for taking care of its sake. We do it because taking care of the animals, taking care of our health, and in turn makes a very healthy environment, right? So that is the concept of the One Health, right? So animal health, human health, and the environment health, it's all intertwined. And if we ignore one piece of it, then it affects all. And obviously, the ultimate goal is coexistence between humans and wildlife, and eventually, you know, uniting in order to protect our health, the animal health, and making the environmental health possible, right? So thank you for joining us again today, and we hope this information is something that opens all your eyes, and you're able to see the importance of wildlife crime and why we need to um, stand for it in order for it to stop, right? In order for us to protect our biodiversity and our wildlife in Belize. So again, thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this live.
All right, so there you had it. That was the example of illegal wildlife traffic victims that we have seen here at um, BWRC. So now, since all presentations are done, I'll go back to the second question again, since no one has answered yet. And that question is, what to do when a bat gets trapped inside your house? And the options again: A, open all doors and windows leading outside. B, kill the bat. C, get as low to the ground as possible. D, secure pets and children. E, open doors to other rooms. F, try to trap the bat with a towel or net. And G, get on a higher surface. And again, this question has more than one correct option. So type in your answers on the comment section below. And now, since I went mute the first two times, again, this is a QR code to our PayPal account for which you can donate, send in your donations, and you can also donate items and supplies that we use. And again, those are towels, pillows, covers, sheets, or clothes, paper towels, syringes, needles, masks. Those are all things that we can use here at the clinic. And we have an answer there from Martha Juarez, her son. Um, but the response is not complete. Again, the question has more than one answer. I'll put up the question again. More than one option, correct option. And here's the question one more time. Select all the answers, well, all the options that you think are the correct answer, and I will go over them once someone has answered correctly. And then again, I would like to invite you all to email us at bzwildlifeambassador@gmail.com if you wish to join the Wildlife Ambassador program. For the program, we will be having workshops with the topics illegal wildlife trade, trafficking, human and wildlife conflict, and we will also talk about zoonosis and zoonotic diseases as it is related to the concept of One Health, which again is the concept that um, the health of humans, all animals, and the environment are all connected. So that gives us more reason why we should take care of not only ourselves but the environment and the animals that live in the environment that we also occupy. And again, if you want to be a part of the Wildlife Ambassador program, send us an email to bzwildlifeambassador@gmail.com. And if you have any um, questions or concerns about wildlife or come across any wildlife that is in need, you can always call the number behind me, 615-5159, or you can also send an email to bzwildlifeclinic@gmail.com. And if you want more information on the clinic, on courses that the clinic offers, you can go to the clinic website, which is believeswildlifeclinic.org, and that has all our courses that are offered here, section on the Wildlife Ambassador program with some other information on the page as well. Right, well, since no one's answering, I'll go to the answer for the second question, which are A, open all doors and windows leading outside, C, get low to the ground, and D, secure pets and children. Right, so those are the answers for the second question. And since Martha Juarez's son was the only one that answered, I guess he could get the prize for that, right? Since he did answer one one of the correct options. So that is the end. That is the end of this live session. Um, um, and later on, we will post when the next live session will be next month in February, and hopefully you all can join us. And hopefully, well, more than guaranteed by that time, Giann will be back as well. All right. So thank you for joining and watching, and hopefully you learned something. And my apologies for all the technical difficulties. But yeah, I think it went well. All right. Till next time. Goodbye.
Thank you.